To the Point with Michael Williams.
There are more questions about Facebook than ever before. Customers are realizing just how much of their personal information is on it and who can get it. Will people start spending less time on the site? Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm Tori Dunnan, in for Michael Williams, who's on assignment. With more details now coming out about Facebook and personal information being taken, many people are being far more skeptical about the social media giant. And some are now wondering what Facebook can do to improve its image. Joining me now to discuss that and much more is Alan Krawitz, who is an internet security expert and WPTV's cybersecurity expert. So first of all, thank you for coming in. The biggest question is, do you think people are understanding just how much information they're putting out there by posting something small on Facebook?
No. I make that point all the time. We get people continually telling us, well, I really don't post that much. I'm very careful what I put out there. But if I look at their Facebook page, it's uncanny how much information I can glean and what people out there who want to harvest this data can get from a typical Facebook page.
What kind of information are we talking about?
Well, let's take a typical picture. You have some pictures of your house, for example, and you think, well, I don't really say much. I don't say where I live, whatever. But Google has an algorithm where you can see where a picture's taken anywhere in the world just from the background information. I can see what time you leave the house, what time you're typically home, what time you're typically at work. Do you have kids? Do you have a dog if I want to break in? Is it a big dog, a little dog? Do you have valuables in the house? That's just from a picture, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. And then I combine that with some of the things that you like and don't like and interests and things like that, and it's pretty shocking what kind of information I can tell about an individual.
And what about targeted marketing? Sometimes you look up something, maybe on Amazon or whatever it might be, and then all of a sudden that item shows up in your Facebook feed.
Yeah, Facebook's got the reputation for being scary accurate at people having conversations and then magically the item's for sale on the site. That's their business. Their business isn't social media or making an interesting platform. Their business is selling ads. So they are uncanny good at harvesting your data, your interests, your likes, to present ads and information that will get people to click on things.
How easy is it for a company that we've heard a lot about recently, Cambridge Analytica, to get that personal information?
Oh, we're giving it to them. It's super easy. All these surveys you see out on the web, free programs, free little trivia. Oh, are you a Libra? And what does that mean? And these weird things that are out there. They're frequently a reason that they're asking for this information and offering some kind of free game or insight. It's because that information is valuable to them. And they are really good at collecting this data. What's even more scary is what they can do with the data, using things like artificial intelligence, algorithmic comparisons of the data. They can really tell a lot about you that's kind of shocking.
It's almost a way of life now that you partake in social media, and for a lot of people, they feel if they don't, then they're missing out on really what's become a normal everyday activity. What can you tell them is okay to post, what's not okay to post? Is there even a line in the sand like that?
There's almost not, It's almost to the point now where the damage is done. And think of it this way, even if you're not on social media, there's so much information out about you that you haven't even volunteered. One of the big issues with the Facebook Cambridge Analytica break is that people could tag you as a friend or reference you on Facebook, and that exposed some of your data, just by having you as a friend on the site, even if you're not posting. Not to mention the large amounts of data about any given person on the internet in general. It's kind of shocking if you know where to look, what you can find out about anybody, and this is information they haven't even put out there. So to answer your question, the ship kind of has sailed already.
So there's not advice on what you should and shouldn't post, really?
The one thing I will say is be paranoid. So there's already a ton out there. You can't do anything about what's already out there.
So you can't take back a post you made, a picture you put up there?
No, every now and then I hear some celebrity, oh, we're going to fight and get this taken down from these sites, or something's been shared from one of the leaks or whatever. There is no way they're going to put that toothpaste back in the tube. However, you really should be thinking about what you're putting out there. This case, one of the things that excites me about it is the breach itself, and it's not even really a breach technically, but what happened, it's not the event, but if it can bring some more awareness to it. It's uncanny how many people don't pay attention to what they do on social media until it's too late. When you've had your identity stolen or you've been taken advantage or your bank account emptied, it's too late, So being paranoid about what you put in the picture. If anybody asks you for information out there, that's probably my hot button run right now. If you install an app and it says, I need access to your contacts or I need access to your friends, why does XYZ app need that? If I have an app to find the nearest pizza store, why does it need access to my friends? Why does it need access to whatever it may be, my photos? Okay, so you should start paying attention to those things because this isn't a breach. You're volunteering the information in most cases, so ask these questions.
What do you think we can expect to see from Facebook, say, over the next 6 months to a year? Any changes?
I'm really intrigued by that. So one of the things with Facebook is, when it comes to Apple and Microsoft and firms like that, they are hyper-analyzed. If they try to step over the line even a little bit, they get an anvil dropped on them. Facebook has historically been the opposite. They always seem to kind of push the envelope. How much can we get away with? You know, we really aren't getting any negative feedback until now. They finally got zapped. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg had to appear in front of Congress, and I think they're finally realizing, all right, we're getting big enough, we're on the radar, and we need to be careful. This is coming back to bite us. The other big thing is, this is a big turning point for Facebook. Their membership is now at 2.2 billion active users. That's something like a third of the population of Earth. And for the first time ever, they've had some drops in some of their key metrics in membership.
Significant drops? Or?
Not significant yet, but again, the crest is always a slow until it picks up momentum. The neat thing with the internet world is, when things turn, they turn fast. MySpace back in the day was the undisputable king of social media. Everybody had it. Overnight, it disappeared. You know, there's been other major examples in the internet world, you know, going back over time, where people think, never is this going to change. And like a year
AOL
later, it's uncanny how quick it happens sometimes. There's a delete Facebook movement out there that's gaining popularity. We have CEOs like Steve Wozniak saying, you know, get off there. You have companies pulling down their pages for whatever reason. So it's kind of a fork in the road. You know, is this just a minor bump in the road, or is this the turning point, and a year later we're going to look back at this moment as the downfall of the Facebook empire?
And do you think it's fair to compare Facebook to MySpace? I mean, it is such a social media giant. We were talking about the fact that it's not just Facebook. They own other platforms, other companies, Instagram, for example. So are they here to stay?
I think they're getting smart, they're diversifying, they're keeping their options open. And a lot of companies, AOL is a great example that you bring up. You know, they tried to move into other sites. All right, we're no longer the dial-up service when the internet took off. We're going to allow people to have email, or we're going to have a special, you know, content. And that never really got hold enough, so that when their dial-up service started plummeting, they didn't really have another foothold. Facebook's in a bit better shape with the Instagram and whatnot like that. But their bread and butter is still Facebook. And if they're smart, they're kind of putting down some other anchors in some other areas just in case things turn that way.
And during these congressional hearings, we heard a lot about government regulation when it comes to Facebook and social media in general, but there is significant opposition to that. Why do you think that is?
Just keeping them out of the business. First of all, most of the regulation we see in the internet world and security world tends to lag. It tends to be off the beaten path. You know, we'll see the equivalent of, if you want to secure your house, you know, let's have a 20-page document about how you lock your window. But meanwhile, they didn't say anything about your front door being wide open. So a lot of it's just misplaced. It creates a lot of problems, and in some cases actually lowers security. And every corporation wants the government to stay out. They want to self-regulate as much as they can and do things. Now keep in mind, it's in Facebook's best interest to nip this in the bud hard, because it's not the government they need to worry about. Members have no easy way, I mean, they can very easily abandon this flagship, and then they're in real trouble.
Right. As far as advertisers go, if Facebook starts making personal information in some form or fashion harder to get to, then potentially we could see a drop in advertising dollars. So is it really in their best interest to protect personal information or not?
That's a great question. So they're really walking this fine line. We want you, the advertiser, to have as much power as you want. I want to get this person with this income that has these interests with. They want to dial it in right to the exact person that wants their ad and that has a chance of clicking it. But by the same token, if they do too much and it's perceived as an invasion of privacy, or that you're dialing in, you know, invading privacy, they could, you know, lose their reputation and consequently lose a ton of members. So they're really walking a fine line here. I mean, they're kind of being punished for their success. The more accurate they can dial in these advertisements and target people, the more successful they've been. But they've been so good at it, now they're on the radar.
We've talked about Facebook and the influence on voters in the last election, Russia using bots. Is this something that's going to be cracked down on at all?
I think they're trying. The problem is, when we've had some new developments in the security world with Russia trying to get into people's home routers and devices, and there's a lot of things going on like that. And, but that is really hard to contain. One, we can't exactly go attack Russia over these cyber invasions and things like that, but you're seeing more of these bots, you're seeing more of both malicious parties and corporations for marketing invading our resources, invading our data, getting in there. So there's a big push to stop it and to lock it down, but the cat's kind of out of the bag in so many ways that it would be a challenge at best to do that.
Do you think when this debate becomes political, as it has somewhat, that people tune it out?
To some degree, but I would actually argue what got them in this time is because it involved the election. If they harvest 10,000 people's babies' birth dates, that's really sensitive. You're getting marketing data on my child. People get a little upset. There's some issues, there's some bumbling. But when you mess with the election and you may have swayed people to do something that's unpopular with the majority of the population, that seems to have gotten the attention. They've had a million issues, and so have other companies. And it's unpopular for a while, maybe it gets the media for a little while, then it fades away. This time, he's in front of Congress pretty quick because it was political.
We've talked before, I've done stories with you about the best advice to give to people, and you've sort of compared it to if someone came up to your door, you wouldn't say, oh, here's my address, here's my driver's license, and that applies to online as well.
Oh yeah, and I see it all the time. I mean, I'm guilty of it too. It's just so convenient. People think of all the positive things. My friends and family can see what's going on. Right. I can share some good news. But the bad guys are masters at looking at your data. And so you really have to think of it that way. If someone knocked on your door and said, hey, do you mind if I come around and take a few pictures inside your house? You would think they're out of their mind. But we do that all the time and worse.
So what's your advice to people then?
Be paranoid. I mean, there's two big lessons here with this thing. And it's not the Cambridge Analytica breach and what happened here. The two big things is what's going to happen with Facebook, and it's probably going to survive, but at some point, there's a potential for a big downturn, and it will probably happen fast. The other one is, this is the wake-up call. We preach this. This is not news to anybody out there. Be careful what you put online. Everybody's heard this before. Nobody is really paying attention. This almost needs to be a required lesson to be on the internet. You need to think about everything you're accepting online that you do blindly, what you put out there, what you install, all these things. People are not nearly paranoid enough.
All right, that's a message for everyone. Thanks so much for coming in. We definitely appreciate it and sharing your insight as well. Well, coming up, one Florida candidate's political ads already are hitting the air. We're going to talk about that and more with our roundtable when we get back. Coming up, did Brightline officials do something that will make them a major campaign issue this year? Our roundtable takes up that and much more when we get back. Now for our roundtable with Mariana Mancuso, a Republican political strategist and author of the PoliticalHype.com, a blog that is aimed at conservative millennials. Also, News Channel 5 political analyst Brian Crowley, author of the CrowleyPoliticalReport.com. A little more than a week after announcing that he is running for the Senate against Bill Nelson, Governor Rick Scott has already started with the ads on TV. You might have seen them as well. He is spending $3 million initially on TV ads. Are we seeing, once again, the Rick Scott overwhelm the competition with ads strategy? What do you think?
Well, this is exactly what he did the first time he ran for governor. By April of that year, he started running ads, and of course, at that time, nobody knew who Rick Scott was. But he ran very, very good ads, and I remember I was impressed by his first ads in his first campaign for governor because they were very, very well done. And you could tell that this was somebody who had some money behind him, and clearly in this campaign, Rick Scott's not going to be short of money.
How do you think the money will compare to the previous?
Rick Scott will raise and spend of his own money whatever it takes to win. He proved this in both of his races. When he ran in re-election against Charlie Crist, even Republican pollsters and Republican lobbyists were convinced on election day that Rick Scott was going to lose. But in the end, in the last weeks of the campaign, he spent a small fortune on running ads and doing other work to push himself over the top. And I think he'll follow pretty much the same formula this time. Whether or not he'll succeed, we don't know, but I think it'll be pretty much the same formula.
Absolutely. He's going to continue to inundate and flood the airwaves as well as digital media. He's going to go online. If you haven't seen his ads yet on Facebook, they'll be coming through every type of facet to get to all the voters right now. And that's one thing he does really well. And he's going to basically stomp Bill Nelson in that area because Bill Nelson does not have the money right now to go on TV.
So this is something that's just going to continue on until, okay. We also had a pretty interesting moment, I would say. It was last week at a hearing that was led by Congressman Brian Mast, who represents, of course, you guys know, but Martin, St. Lucie, and part of Palm Beach County. And this was all about Brightline, the high-speed rail system that has plans to go to Orlando. And Brightline's CEO said that those on the Treasure Coast who oppose it are, quote, narrow-minded. Have we just started seeing what could become a major campaign issue with this, or has this just been building?
Well, I mean, it's been building ever since Brightline announced and, of course, then said that they weren't going to open a station in Stewart or anywhere else in the Treasure Coast. So this, you know, there are a lot of folks who would not have opposed it had they announced that they were going to open a station there. And I've spoken to folks who have said that. So now we have a lot of not in my backyard stuff going on. And is it a campaign issue there? Absolutely. In the Treasure Coast, that's a campaign issue. And if the opposition of Brightline continues to be strong and vocal, you have to deal with it. You have to address it and probably at the very least tell them you're willing to look into it.
Do you think the opposition even matters in the long term here?
I think that what's important for Brian Mast and his campaign to re-elect is that he's hyper-local. That's what won him the election the first go-around. That's what's going to win him a re-election, is the fact that he's focusing in on Brightline, which Martin County has a strong foothold in Brian's district, and they really don't want to see Brightline come through, and they're going to be the voters that turn out that vote for Brian for representation in D.C., and they're ones that are donating to his campaign directly, and he separates himself from his competition as the hometown hero versus the Johnny-come-lately.
But it's also, I think Marianne might agree, it's also a bit of a catch-22 for Brightline. You come out strongly opposing Brightline, the odds are you're not going to be able to stop Brightline from coming through. So then, you know, at what point down the road do the people look at you and then think you have failed in getting the outcome that they want?
He's going to have to thread the needle on that issue, absolutely.
Do you think, though, that the fact that the CEO said this, calling residents of the Treasure Coast who oppose Brightline narrow-minded, sort of set up the congressman easily to then oppose that, and it creates right and wrong right there? It
was a dumb thing to say. He had no reason to insult the people in the Treasure Coast who oppose the train. You know, you speak to them in a professional manner, and Brightline, I know, has done a great deal to try to explain what they're trying to do, but you know, you don't. That was just uncalled for, the comment that he made. It was, you know, and it was not very professional. And if he had a boss, I'd fire him.
100%. He's given them fodder for this election cycle all the way to November. All you have to do is put that on a loop and replay, and anybody that is supporting Brightline will hear from those voters on Election Day.
And do you think the opposition is strong enough in the Treasure Coast
to stop Brightline? No. Ultimately, I don't think they can stop Brightline.
No.
Okay, we're going to talk about another really big story. We talked about the passing of former First Lady Barbara Bush last week. We know the Bushes have just a huge tie to Florida, right? Even before Jeb became the governor. How do you think she will be remembered nationwide, but specifically here in South Florida?
Well, you know, the Bushes spent a lot of time on Jupiter Island many years ago. They used to have a home there, and you know, President George Bush I, you know, used to play golf there on the golf course there. Barbara Bush is wherever she went, she was a beloved figure. She spent a lot of time in Palm Beach County. She had attended a lot of charitable events. And I think that, you know, she left a strong and lasting and loving impression on a lot of people in Palm Beach County, both Republican and Democrat.
Oh, I completely agree. I mean, she is essentially America's grandmother. She was the second woman in history to be the wife of a president as well as the mother to one, followed by Abigail Adams. And her legacy that she left on literacy, as well as when she was going around with the AIDS patients and hugging them and showing them that she couldn't get the disease, she really had this warm soul to her that kind of went through wherever she went, and it was wonderful.
Okay, we will be back with much more in just a moment. It is now time for our closing comments, beginning with the Mancuso moment. You're up.
Well, Congressman Crist and Congressman Curbelo are co-sponsored a bill called the Honest Ads Act, which is seeking to improve disclosure on online ads. We're looking at you, Russia, to ensure that you're not toying in our ads and meddling in social media for the upcoming election. So we'll be keeping an eye on that bill.
Something we talked about previously on the show.
Well, you know, as the election gets underway and we start seeing a lot of these ads, and the ads generally will tend to be negative, and they will tend to slam everybody. And why is that? You ask individual voters, and they will tell you they hate these negative ads. But why do the negative ads run? The negative ads run is because it works. And maybe voters need to start setting politicians to a higher standard. If you don't want all the negativity, you have to object to it. And you have to say, that's not how you get my vote. So if we really want to change the body politic, it always starts with the voters.
All right, good point. All right, so thank you for spending time with us on today's To The Point. If you'd like to send us your comments about today's broadcast, just go to WPTV.com and click on the To The Point page, and you'll find a section to send us your views. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.